Good morning, neighbours and friends. It's just clicked 6 o'clock, so we might start. Welcome to the 2024 Anzac Day dawn service here at Walsh Bay. It's fantastic to see so many people as this event continues to grow. I'd like to start this morning by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands and waters in which we live and work and meet this morning, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and on this day especially to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men and women who have served Australia in the Defence Forces. Anzac Day has been one of the most important dates in Australian calendar since 1916. Along with Australians everywhere, we meet on this day to remember those who have died in the service of Australia. We do this on the anniversary of the day that the Australian New Zealand soldiers landed on that fateful beach in Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey on the 25th of April. Today we especially recognise the more than 100,000 servicemen and women who have lost their lives in military operations in the name of Australia. We also remember those who have survived those initial conflicts only to live with the trauma and ongoing injuries throughout the rest of their lives. The deeds of those men and women can sometimes seem remote to us in our comfortable modern lives. To help bring some things a little closer to home, Lieutenant Jim Warren, RNZ in VR retired, will now share the story of a local fellow neighbour who served in the First World War. Jim.
Well, this morning I'd like to tell you the story of one of our own, William Holmes. William was born on the 12th of September in 1862 at the military barracks in Dawes Point, which makes him very much a local in my view. His father was Captain William Holmes of the New South Wales Military Forces, late of the 11th Foot, who had come to New South Wales from the UK in 1845. And his mother was Jane Hackett, whose father had also served in the 11th Foot. Who would have known at the time of his birth that Holmes would become a senior public servant, serve with distinction in 2 wars, receive a multitude of honours and awards, become a Major General, and have 3 roads in Sydney named after him? Young Holmes spent most of his early life in Victoria Barracks and was educated at Paddington Public School. He was keen to become a soldier, but his father thought the New South Wales Public Service offered greater opportunities. He worked at the Sydney Mint for a while, then joined the Department of Public Works as a clerk in 1887. The same year, he married Susan Ellen Green, whose family also lived in the Victoria Barracks. They were to have 3 children, one of whom died in infancy. Their daughter Dorothy married an army officer, and they produced 2 army officers who served in the Second World War. Their son Basil rose to the rank of colonel in the British Indian Army before becoming an orchardist in the New South Wales Southern Highlands. In 1888, Holmes was appointed Chief Clerk and Paymaster of the newly formed Metropolitan Board of Water Supply and Sewerage in Sydney. In 1895, he was appointed Secretary and Chief Clerk, position he was to hold for life. During his term, the board built the Cataract, Cordeaux and Avon dams. But family history suggests that Holmes would rather have built a dam at Warragamba, which was built much later, as you all know. Given his military background, it was natural Holmes should become a citizen soldier. At the age of 10, he joined the 1st Infantry Regiment, New South Wales Military Forces, as a bugler and served in almost every rank in the regiment until he commanded it in 1902. He was commissioned 2nd Lieutenant in 1886 and was promoted Lieutenant in 1890, Captain in 1894 and Major in 1900. For 18 months between his non-commissioned and commissioned service, he served in a company of submarine miners. In 1899, Holmes volunteered for service in South Africa, where he saw action at Colesberg, Pretoria and Diamond Hill, where in June 1900 he was wounded and invalided home in August of that year. He was mentioned in dispatches, promoted to a brevet lieutenant colonel, and awarded the Distinguished Service Order. He resumed his civilian occupation as Secretary of the Board of Water Supply, but continued his voluntary military service, first as Lieutenant Colonel commanding the 1st Australian Infantry Regiment from 1902 to 1911, then as Colonel commanding the 6th Infantry Brigade from August 1912. Shortly after the First World War broke out, a special expeditionary force comprising naval and military units was formed to occupy German possessions in New Guinea and the Pacific Islands. Holmes was appointed its commander, and under his command, the force sailed from Sydney on the auxiliary cruiser HMAS Berrima on the 19th of August 1914. The German governor surrendered to Holmes on the 12th of September 1914 after the capture of Reveille, and the British flag was raised over the town. Holmes became the administrator of New Guinea until he relinquished the post to Colonel Samuel Petherbridge in January 1915 and returned to Australia, where his appointment to the Expeditionary Force was terminated on the 6th of February 1915. Holmes was next appointed to the Australian Imperial Force as commander of the newly formed 5th Brigade. The brigade left Sydney in May 1915, arrived in Egypt in June, and went on to Gallipoli in August, where it became part of the 2nd Division. At about this time, Holmes was promoted to Brigadier General. He took over acting command of the 2nd Division in November and was still in temporary command of the division in December 1915, when they were amongst the last Anzac troops to be evacuated from Gallipoli. After the Gallipoli evacuation, Holmes returned to the 5th Brigade, which he took to the Western Front in April 1916. He led the brigade in the attacks on the Poitiers Heights in August 1916 and at Flers in October. In January 1917, Holmes was given command of the 4th Division and promoted to Major General. Holmes commanded his division at Bullecourt in April and at Messines in June. On the 2nd of July, he took the Premier of New South Wales, William Holman, to survey the Messines battlefield. And at one point they left his car and set off on foot. As they set out, a German shell landed nearby and Holmes was hit through the chest and lung. His aide, along with the private secretary to Holman, took Holmes to the nearest aid post where he died. Holmes was the most senior Australian officer killed on the Western Front and was buried in Trois Arbres British Cemetery near Armentières. A memorial to Holmes was unveiled at the offices of the Metropolitan Board of Water Supply and Sewerage on the 29th of August 1919. Other memorials include William Holmes Street in the Potts Hill Business Park, General Holmes Drive that runs between Botany Bay and Sydney Airport, and Holmes Avenue, Clontarf. During the course of his military career, Holmes was mentioned in dispatches 5 times, received the Distinguished Service Order, became a Companion of the Order of St Michael and St George, received the Russian Order of St Anne, and received the Volunteer Decoration. This is one of many stories of service, both in war and civilian life, and today we remember Major General William Holmes, the young lad from Dawes Point who became a distinguished public servant and equally distinguished soldier.
Thank you, Jim, a truly local hero. The Ode of Remembrance has been recited to commemorate wartime service and sacrifice since 1921. It is drawn from the poem For the Fallen by Lawrence Binyon, which was first published in 1914. On completion of the ode, the last post will be played by bandsman Ian Stenning, of the Fire and Rescue New South Wales Band. This historical music was played in army camps to announce the end of the day, a time when soldiers should be resting. The last post is played today for those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. It means they have done their duty and they are now at rest. After the last post, there will be a minute's silence. This is a time for us to think about those who've served in Australia's armed forces and those who continue to serve, those who have lost their lives and those who continue to suffer physically and mentally as a result of their service. On completion of the silence, Reveille will be played. Historically, this was used to wake up sleeping soldiers on the battlefield. In a nod to our maritime precinct here at Walsh Bay, today we are going to include the naval verse of the ode, and we will actually be playing the naval version of Reveille, used to wake sailors on ships. Please be upstanding if you are sitting down and able, for the ode of remembrance recited by Commander Andrew Johnston, RAN.
They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers are laid at their head. Their tombstone is a rusting hulk, a vast on the ocean bed. They shall not grow old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, dare the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.
Thank you, Andrew and Ian. That concludes our service for this morning. We thank you for your attendance, and we now invite you to join us on a modern twist of the gunfire breakfast. Sausage sizzle provided by our friends at management, and Zupanos invite you to inspect the wonderful vehicle that Greg has brought down, a genuine 1943 Australian Jeep. More than welcome to inspect that, take some photos. If you speak to Greg nicely, he may even let you get inside it. Should you be so inclined, there'll be a QR code on the table with the sausages if you'd like to make a donation to Soldier On to help the current veterans through their troubles. We hope to see you again next year as this tradition grows. However you choose to spend the rest of your day, please reflect on the service of those who've gone before us. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you.